The silent front the galaxy was burning. World after world fell under the endless war of the alien coalitions. Ships clashed in the void. Fleets tore each other apart, and every commander believed victory was near. For the alien generals, humans, were nothing but a distant memory, a species that once fought, once bled, and then fell silent. They told their soldiers, "The humans are gone, their fleets shattered, their power broken." It was a lie many wanted to believe on the eastern rim of the galaxy. A massive alien fleet gathered near a red dwarf star. Dozens of battleships hung in orbit, their hulls glowing with the heat of recent battles. The alien generals walked the command decks with pride, their voices sharp, their orders firm. They had cornered what they thought was the last resistance. In this sector, soon, they told themselves, the war would be won, and humanity would be erased from history. But then the silence came. It began as a strange emptiness in the coms. Reports from scouts went dark one by one. At first, the generals dismissed it as interference, the usual static of nebula storms. But then an old veteran, scarred and bitter, whispered a warning. "This is how it begins," he said, his eyes fixed on the stars. "The humans never vanish without reason." The younger officers laughed. They called it superstition, nothing more than the fear of old men. But the veteran did not laugh. He remembered the old battles, the ones fought centuries ago, when humanity still had fleets that could silence entire sectors. He remembered how humans never fought to conquer. They fought to end wars, and when they came with something that could not be matched. Across the alien fleet, strange signals began to echo. A low, heavy pulse, like the beating of a giant heart. It was not coded in any alien language. It was raw, simple, yet terrifying. Every officer who heard it felt their skin crawl. The sound was not just a signal, it was a presence. It carried weight, as if the void itself had chosen to speak. On the command ship, General Zorth leaned over the glowing table of stars. His claws tapped against the surface as the reports poured in. Scout wings gone, outposts silent, long-range sensors blinded. He ordered more ships to fan out, to find the source. But deep inside, even he felt it, the rising edge of dread. Something was coming, something too vast to hide. The alien soldiers whispered in the corridors. They spoke of the phantom, the ancient shadow. Stories spread faster than the generals could stop them, and always the name returned: the humans. Could it be true? Some asked. Could the humans still fight? The generals roared at them to stay silent, to remember their orders, but whispers in the dark always grow louder. Then the first fragment of data appeared. A scout, broken and burning, barely able to send a final message before its engines died. The transmission was short, filled with static, but one image was clear. A shape in the void, larger than anything seen in centuries. A ship with a hull like black stone. A silhouette that blocked out stars. The moment the image appeared on the command screens, the room froze. The younger officers stared in disbelief. The older ones lowered their heads in silence. "Impossible," General Zorth growled. But the word carried no strength. The shape was unmistakable. It was not alien. It was not myth. It was human. And it was moving toward them. Across the fleet, alarms blared, ships scrambled into formation. Orders clashed. Some generals demanded an attack. Others shouted for retreat. Panic, confusion, chaos, all born from a single shadow in the stars. The veterans knew the truth. This was not a ship for battle. This was a message. The humans had returned, and they had chosen this front to speak. In the silence between the alarms, the signal came again, the low, steady pulse, echoing through every channel. It was not words, not commands, not threats. It was a rhythm, heavy and cold. A reminder of the heartbeat of something that should never have been awoken. The alien generals looked at one another for the first time in years. They felt something they had forgotten, Fear, and far beyond the stars, the human dreadnought kept coming, slow, steady, unshaken, like a storm that no one could stop. Asterisk rumors. Of the dreadnought, the alien fleet trembled in silence. After the broken scout's message, no one dared to speak of victory anymore. But in the shadows of every corridor, in the hidden whispers of soldiers and officers, a single word began too. Spread dreadnought. For younger recruits, the word meant nothing. They asked questions with nervous laughter. What is a dreadnought? A human battleship? A myth from old wars? But the veterans did not laugh. They told stories in hushed voices, their eyes distant, their scales pale. They spoke of ships so large they carried the fury of an entire planet. They spoke of armor that no weapon could pierce, and of guns that could erase a fleet with one volley on the command bridge of the alien flagship. General Zorath listened to his staff argue. Some called it propaganda, a trick sent by human survivors to spread fear. Others swore the image was real, the outline too clear, too heavy, too ancient to be faked. One officer whispered that the humans had built only a handful of dreadnoughts, and that each one was cursed, for they were designed not for war, but for judgment. Zorath clenched his jaw, his claws scratching the metal table. Enough, he snarled, his voice echoing across the chamber. The humans are weak, broken, forgotten, their fleets destroyed, their worlds ashes. But even as he spoke, the veteran officers would not meet his eyes. They had lived too long, they had seen too much, and they knew when a shadow in the stars was more than fear. Across the fleet, rumors grew into stories. One soldier swore that his grandfather had fought against a human dreadnought. He claimed that his people's fleet had launched thousands of missiles. And still the human ship kept moving, tearing apart cruisers like glass. Another whispered that the dreadnoughts were alive, that the humans had given them minds, that they never died, only slept in the void, waiting for the time to return. The stories spread like fire, and the more the generals tried to silence them, the stronger they became. Fear has a way of multiplying when it is denied. And soon, entire battalions looked to the stars with haunted eyes, waiting for the shadow to arrive. Meanwhile, deep in the human dreadnought, silence ruled. No broadcasts, no communication, no explanation of its return. It moved forward like a ghost, its engines dark, its hull scarred by battles long past. The only sound it gave was that same heavy pulse, echoing across the void, a rhythm that grew louder with every hour. General Zorath gathered his council of war. Maps and holograms lit the room as officers shouted at one another. Strike first, before it reaches the fleet. One demanded, fall back and regroup. Another insisted, if we flee now, the soldiers will lose faith, shouted a third. The chamber filled with anger, pride, and fear, until the veteran captain at the edge of the table finally spoke. You do not understand what is coming, he said softly. His scales were faded with age, and his eyes burned with memories no one else could claim. I fought the humans once, long ago, he continued, and I saw what one dreadnought can do. It is not a warship, it is a judgment. When it arrives, it decides who remains and who is erased. The room fell silent. The younger officers scoffed, but their voices shook. Zorath glared at the captain, his pride refusing to yield. Yet in his chest, the general felt the same cold truth. The dreadnought was no myth, and it was coming for them. In the outer fleets, panic began to grow. Reports of deserters reached the command. Some ships quietly drifted away, breaking formation under the cover of darkness. Their captains chose survival over loyalty, but desertion only spread the rumors faster. If the dreadnought could scare entire fleets into fleeing, what would happen when it finally revealed its power? Still, no human voice came, no declaration, no demand, only the steady heartbeat of the signal. Some claimed it was not a signal at all, but the ship itself breathing. Others swore they could feel it in their bones. A rhythm that echoed inside their chests. The dreadnought was not just coming. It was already inside their minds. At last, the order came from the alien council. They demanded proof. They demanded that the fleet hold its ground. They told Zorath to silence the rumors, to crush the whispers of the soldiers. But how do you silence fear when every star seems to pulse with the same rhythm? The general stared into the void, and for the first time in his career, he wondered if his war was already lost. Because out there, beyond the reach of their sensors, something vast was moving. Not fast, not rushed, but steady, inevitable, like a storm walking slowly toward its prey, and the soldiers, no longer laughing, whispered the truth to one another. The humans are back, they said. The dreadnought is awake, asterisk. First shadows on the horizon, the alien fleet stretched across the dark edge of the nebula. Dozens of warships floated in formation, engines humming, weapons armed, soldiers restless. But no matter how many ships stood ready, no one felt safe anymore. Because the rumors had already broken their courage. Every eye was locked on the void beyond, waiting for a shadow. It began with the scouts, fast cruisers sent into the thick clouds of the nebula. Their task simple: to find the source of the signal. One by one they vanished. Some went silent. Instantly, others sent broken fragments of images before being consumed by static. One final transmission showed something massive moving, too large to be natural, too dark to be explained. Then nothing. General Zorath ordered more ships forward. He told himself it was cowardice to hesitate. The humans were weak, their technology outdated. Yet as the minutes passed, even he felt his scales crawl. The void was no longer empty. It pressed down on them, heavy and thick, as if something enormous hid just out of sight. On smaller ships, soldiers whispered. They swore the nebula itself was moving. Clouds shifting like waves against an invisible hull. Some claimed they saw flashes, faint glimmers of metal, hidden in the fog. Others swore they heard the same pulse, not through the comms, but in their very bones. The dreadnought was near. They said, and it was waiting for them to come closer. A captain on the left flank panicked. His voice broke across the fleet-wide channel. It's here, it's here. I saw it with my own eyes, he screamed. His ship fired torpedoes into the nebula, bright streaks of fire vanishing into the dark. There was no explosion, no response, only silence. Then his vessel went dark, snuffed out as if swallowed by a hand. No debris, no flame, no sound, only absence. The fleet recoiled. Some ships broke formation, engines flaring as they tried to flee. Zorath roared across the channels, his voice full of fury. Hold your ground, cowards, this is nothing but tricks. But his words carried less weight with every passing second. Because tricks do not erase ships without a trace. In the council chambers, tension cracked like glass. Younger officers demanded to strike the nebula with everything they had, saturate it with plasma, with missiles, with all the fury of their fleets. But the veterans shook their heads. No, they whispered. You cannot strike what waits in silence. You cannot wound what chooses when to be seen. The next scout wing reported something different. They saw not the ship itself, but the absence of stars, as if something so vast drifted through space that it eclipsed constellations. Whole sectors of sky turned black when it passed, a shape too colossal for their minds to accept. One officer trembled as he whispered, "It is not a ship. It is a night that moves." Then, at last, a glimpse through the fog. A fragment of hull gleamed under the red light of the dwarf star. It was not smooth, but scarred, marked with burns. From wars long forgotten, alien officers leaned forward in horror as the scanners traced its size. Bigger than any battleship, bigger than any fortress they had ever built. Its length stretched for miles, its presence heavy like a planet, and yet it moved with the silent grace of a predator. The dreadnought did not rush. It did not charge. It did not open fire. It simply glided closer, as if certain that nothing could stop it. The alien fleet prepared their weapons. The sky lit with targeting beams, but not a single ship fired, because to fire was to admit the shadow was real. And none wanted to be the first to provoke it. In the mess halls, soldiers fell silent, staring at the wall screens. In the command decks, officers shook while pretending to be calm. Everywhere across the fleet, the same thought spread like poison. If this was only the horizon, what would happen when the dreadnought showed itself fully? Zorath tried to stand tall. He ordered long-range bombardment, his voice full of pride. But even as he gave the order, he knew it was hollow. For deep inside, he could see the truth in the eyes of his crew. They were not soldiers anymore. They were prey, and the dreadnought was the hunter. Then the pulse came again, louder, deeper. This time, it shook the hulls of their ships, rattling walls and echoing through every bone. The heartbeat of something that had already claimed the battlefield. The younger soldiers covered their ears, but the veterans bowed their heads. They knew this sound. They remembered it. It was not just a signal. It was a sentence. The horizon was no longer empty. The shadows had arrived. And soon the galaxy would see what the humans had left behind. Asterisk. The human arrival, the nebula split like a curtain. Slowly, silently, the shadow took shape. Alien eyes widened, voices faltered, and for the first time in generations, generals felt the weight of something greater than their fleets. The human dreadnought emerged. Its hull was blackened and scarred, covered with wounds from ancient battles that no alien remembered. But every scar told a story, proof that this was not a myth, not a ghost, but a survivor. A survivor of wars so violent, the galaxy itself had tried to forget. And yet, here it was, drifting forward with the patience of eternity. The alien scanners screamed warnings, their readings impossible to accept. The dreadnought was larger than their flagships, longer than entire space stations. Its bulk stretched like a continent across the void, swallowing stars as it moved. It was not simply a warship, it was a world of iron and fury, built for one purpose alone. On the alien flagship, General Zorath gripped the rail, his voice trembling. Despite his pride, "Fire," he commanded. The order echoed across the fleet. Plasma cannons lit the darkness. Missiles streaked like fireflies. Energy beams cut through the void. The entire armada unleashed its rage at the single ship. The dreadnought did not flinch. The weapon struck its hull. Sparks and flames burst. Yet it kept moving, steady and slow. Alarms rang across alien ships, their officers shouting in disbelief. No effect, no effect, the armor holds. For every 1,000 shots, the dreadnought answered with silence. And in that silence, fear grew heavier than any weapon. Then the human ship stirred. Lights crawled across its surface. Glowing lines like veins of fire, guns shifted, massive barrels turning with the grace of predators. The void trembled as the first volley fired. Not dozens, not hundreds, but one. One blast, pure and unstoppable. The beam cut across space, and an alien squadron vanished in a single flash. No wreckage, no debris, only dust spinning where ships once stood. Panic exploded across the alien fleet. Officers screamed retreat. Soldiers shouted prayers. Captains begged for orders that made sense. But no order could stop the dreadnought. It had not come to fight a battle. It had come to remind the galaxy of what humans could build. The dreadnought fired again. Another section of the fleet vanished, swallowed by light and silence. Yet the ship did not chase, did not hunt. It advanced slowly, as if every mile forward was a statement. The message was clear: humans had returned, and they had chosen this battlefield as their stage. Inside the alien command halls, chaos reigned. Some generals argued for retreat, others screamed for endless fire. But none could hide the truth written in their trembling hands. This was not war, this was fear, and fear had already broken their fleet. On the lower decks of alien cruisers, soldiers wept. They pressed their hands against cold walls, feeling. The dreadnought's pulse echoed through the metal. One young recruit whispered to another, "Why do they not speak? Why do they not demand surrender?" The older soldier shook his head. "Because they are not here to talk," he said, his voice hollow. "They are here to show us why the galaxy once trembled." The dreadnought drew closer. Its guns quiet after 2 volleys. It did not need to fire more. Its silence was louder than any bombardment. Its presence alone tore courage apart. Alien ships began to scatter, captains breaking ranks, fleeing without orders. The great fleet that once claimed victory now looked like prey fleeing the shadow of a beast. General Zorath slammed his claws against the command table. "Hold your ground," he roared, but his words carried no strength, because even he, the proudest of them all, could not force his eyes away from the truth. The dreadnought was unstoppable, and no alien fleet could deny it. And then, for the first time, the dreadnought spoke. A signal burst across every channel, not in alien tongue, not in riddles. A voice, human and calm, echoed in the minds of every soldier. "You thought humanity was gone," the voice said. "You thought we were broken, forgotten, erased." The words were not shouted. They were not angry. They were steady, cold, and final. "We are not here to win a war," the voice continued. "We are here to remind you why you once feared us." The message ended, and the silence returned. But it was not the same silence. As before, it was heavier, darker, crushing the courage of every alien heart. The dreadnought kept moving forward, slow and certain, and behind it, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. Asterisk. Panic in the command halls. The dreadnought's message still echoed through every ship. It was not loud, not violent, but it carried a weight no alien voice could match. "We are not here to win a war. We are here to remind you why you once feared." U.S. The words sank into every soldier, every officer, every general, and fear began to grow into panic. In the Grand Command Hall of the alien flagship, voices clashed like knives. Generals shouted over one another, demanding answers, demanding orders, demanding hope. One slammed his fist against the table, his eyes wild. "Retreat, we must retreat, before it erases us all." Another snarled back, "No, we hold the line. We cannot surrender to fear." A chamber filled with roars, arguments, curses. The unity of the fleet was gone, shattered in a single night. General Zorath tried to hold the center. He pounded the table with his claw, his voice sharp like steel. "Silence. We are generals, not frightened children." But his words were drowned out by the chaos around him. Even his most loyal captains avoided his gaze, their eyes full of doubt. They no longer believed in victory. They no longer believed in him. Reports poured in from across the fleet. Ships breaking formation, captains fleeing without orders, entire squadrons vanishing into the void, running from the shadow. The proud alien armada, once unstoppable, was crumbling like sand in the wind. In the lower decks, soldiers begged there. Commanders for answers. Why are we fighting this? What is that thing? Why don't we leave? No one could answer. The dreadnought had become more than a ship. It was terror made real. A younger general stood in the command hall, his voice shaking. "We must ask the humans what they want. Perhaps they will spare us." The words spread like poison through the chamber. Some nodded in desperation. Others hissed in fury. Zorath's claws cut deep into the table as he glared at the young officer. "You would beg mercy from the very species we swore to erase," he roared. But even as he shouted, he saw the faces of those around him, and he knew the thought was no longer madness. It was temptation. Meanwhile, the dreadnought kept advancing. It did not rush. It did not chase. It moved forward like a mountain, drifting across the stars. Every second it grew closer. Every second the aliens lost more control on the right flank. A captain disobeyed orders and opened fire. His cruiser unleashed everything it had. Plasma, torpedoes, beams. The dreadnought did not even return fire. The human ship simply turned a single cannon. One flash of light, and the cruiser was gone, erased as if it never existed. The message was clear: resistance meant nothing. The panic grew louder in the command hall. Generals argued not about victory, but survival. Hide in the outer sectors. One pleaded, fall back to the homeworlds. Another demanded, abandon this war, abandon everything. Said a third, his voice breaking. The proud alien council, once unshakable, was collapsing under the weight of a single ship. General Zorath felt rage boiling inside him. He had built his career on strength, on power, on fear. Now he watched his officers tremble like frightened children. He screamed at them, called them cowards, called them traitors, but deep in his heart, even he knew the dreadnought had already won, without needing to conquer. In the halls outside the chamber, soldiers shouted. They begged for orders, begged for safety, begged to flee. Some dropped their weapons, refusing to fight. Others tried to board escape craft. Discipline was gone. The fleet was no longer an army. It was a mob waiting to break. And above it all, the dreadnought loomed, silent, patient, unstoppable. Its guns rested, its engines hummed. It did not need to move quickly, because fear moved faster than any weapon. Then the pulse came again. That deep, steady heartbeat that echoed through the void. It rattled the walls of the command hall. It shook the courage of the strongest generals. Some fell to their knees, covering their ears as if that could block it out. Others stared in silence, their minds broken by the weight of sound. General Zorath stood in the middle of the chaos, his fleet crumbling, his council shattered, his pride bleeding away. And for the first time in his long life, he felt the truth. He was not the hunter, not the conqueror, not the master of this war. He was prey, standing before something too great to fight. The dreadnought did not speak again. It did not need to. The silence that followed was more powerful than any voice, because silence meant choice. Would the aliens keep fighting until they were dust? Or would they flee and live with the shame of fear? Either way, the humans had already decided the outcome. Asterisk, the message of humanity. The battlefield had fallen into silence. Alien ships drifted with weapons unarmed, their formations broken. There, courage shattered. The dreadnought stood alone in the void, massive and unmoving. It did not fire. It did not chase. It simply waited. And in that waiting, the galaxy trembled. Inside the alien flagship, General Zorath clutched the railing with shaking claws. His council lay in ruins. His generals divided, his soldiers lost. All around him, screens flickered with the same sight. The dreadnought, steady as a mountain, blocking out the stars. It was not an enemy ship anymore. It was a symbol, and symbols are far more dangerous than fleets. Then, without warning, the silence broke. Every alien ship, every channel, every frequency filled with a voice. It was human, calm, deep, and unshaken. You have forgotten who we are, the voice said. You thought our silence was defeat. You thought our absence was surrender. The words carried no anger, no desperation. They were steady, like truth carved in stone. General Zorath tried to cut the signal. He barked orders at his officers, but the systems would not respond. The message was not being transmitted through their machines. It was everywhere, in the air, in the walls, in their very minds. The voice continued. We did not build this ship to rule the stars. We built it to end wars, to silence those who would burn the galaxy for pride. The generals in the chamber froze. Their pride was their empire. Their war was their glory. And yet, in the humans' words, their empire was nothing but ash. On the lower decks of alien vessels, soldiers wept. They had fought for years believing they were strong. Now they realized strength was standing before them. A single ship holding back an entire armada. Not with fire, not with conquest, but with presence. The voice grew sharper, colder. You fight for dominion. We fight for memory. You wage war to control. We wage war to end it. The Dreadnought's guns shifted. The glowing lines on its hull pulsed brighter. It did not fire, but the message was clear. At any moment, it could erase them, and still it chose not to. In the command hall, one young officer whispered, "Why don't they destroy us? Why don't they finish this?" The old veteran beside him shook his head. "They don't need to," he said softly. "They want us to remember." The human voice spoke again. "Your fleets mean nothing. Your numbers mean nothing. Your pride means nothing. There is only the choice. Continue this war and be erased, or step back and live to remember what you once feared." The words spread across the fleet like fire. Generals who once roared with pride lowered their heads in silence. Soldiers who once cheered for war now prayed for survival. Every alien heart felt the same weight. The humans were not asking for surrender. They were offering a warning written in scars, in silence, in the shadow of a ship that should not exist. General Zoreth trembled with fury. His pride screamed to resist, to fight, to deny, but his heart whispered the truth. They could not win. They had never been able to win, because the Dreadnought was not here to fight a battle. It was here to end a war. The human voice faded, and once again silence returned. But it was no longer an empty silence. It was a command, a choice left hanging in the air, heavier than any weapon. The alien fleets began to move. One by one, their engines flared, not toward battle, but away, retreating, abandoning the field. Some called it cowardice, others called it survival, but all knew it was the only path left on worlds far from the battle. The transmission echoed as well. Civilian leaders, civilians, merchants, warriors, all heard the same human words, all felt the same weight. The galaxy itself had been reminded. Humanity was not gone. Humanity was not broken. Humanity had returned, and they had spoken with the voice of judgment, a voice carried not in anger, but in certainty, the certainty of a species that had once fought the galaxy to a standstill, and now, once again, had shown that fear was the greatest weapon of all. The Dreadnought stood in silence, watching the fleet scatter into the void, not chasing, not striking, because it did not need to. The message had been delivered, and the galaxy would never forget. The aftermath of fear, the battlefield was silent. No alien ships dared remain. Engines flared across the void as the armada scattered in all directions. Generals who once roared of glory now whispered orders of retreat, and soldiers who once raised their weapons now clutched them like burdens. The Dreadnought stood alone. It did not pursue. It did not destroy. It drifted among the stars like a monument of iron and shadow, watching, waiting, reminding. The scars on its hull glowed faintly, each one a story of wars long past, each one a message humans had survived when no one believed they could. On the alien flagship, General Zoreth sat in silence. His claws no longer tapped the command table. His roar no longer filled the air. He stared at the black screen where the Dreadnought's image remained fixed. He could not look away. Every second that ship stood there, it was like a blade at his throat. He knew the truth. The war was not lost in battle. It was lost in memory, because fear had already claimed the hearts of his fleet. Across alien worlds, the message spread faster than any fleet could travel. Civilians heard the human voice. Merchants heard it. Miners heard it. Children heard it. And everywhere the same whisper rose. Humanity has returned. The words passed from port to port, from station to station, from world to world. It did not matter that no human fleet was seen. It did not matter that only one ship stood in the void. The legend had returned, and legends are stronger than armies. In smoky taverns on border colonies, old veterans told stories of the last time humans fought. They spoke of their brutal resolve, their relentless will. They spoke of battles where humanity chose to burn itself if it meant victory. And the younger ones listened with wide eyes. For the first time, they understood why their generals feared a single human ship. The Dreadnought itself did not move. It lingered in the ruins of the battlefield, silent as stone. It was not there to chase, not there to conquer. It was there to be seen, to burn its shadow into the galaxy's memory. Whispers turned into rumors. Rumors turned into fear. Some claimed more dreadnoughts slept in the void, waiting for the call. Others swore humans had never been weak, that their silence had only been a choice, and now the choice was broken. Now they had returned, and nothing would ever be the same. General Zorath finally spoke, his voice a whisper no one expected from him. "We cannot fight this," he said. His officers looked at him in disbelief. The proudest general of their empire had surrendered not with banners, not with words, but with silence. And that silence spread deeper than any command could. On distant council worlds, leaders argued. In fear, should they prepare for war? Should they make peace? Should they run? No one knew, because the Dreadnought had not given orders. It had given a choice, and choices are more dangerous than demands. The galaxy trembled, not because of destruction, but because of restraint. The humans had shown their power, and then stopped. They had revealed their weapon, and then held it back. It was not victory through fire. It was victory through fear. In the endless dark, the Dreadnought finally turned. Its engines burned faintly, its massive hull sliding back into the nebula. It did not vanish in an instant. It drifted slowly, deliberately, as if daring the galaxy to follow. No one did. Every alien ship that still lingered held position. None dared chase. None dared breathe until the shadow was gone. But even when it disappeared into the mists of the void, its presence remained. Every soldier remembered the pulse, the heartbeat that shook their bones. Every general remembered the silence that crushed their courage. Every world remembered the voice that whispered of judgment, and they knew this was not the end. It was only the beginning. For humanity had returned, and the galaxy now lived under their shadow once more. Not a shadow of conquest, but a shadow of memory. A memory sharper than blades, heavier than fleets, stronger than empires. The Dreadnought had spoken without fire, and the galaxy would whisper its message for generations. They are not gone, they said. They are not broken, they said. They are waiting. And somewhere, in the deep silence of the stars, the humans listened. The Dreadnought drifted, and the galaxy feared ***.